you go in introspection first, either as a person, as a leader, or as a company. It's about why am I doing what I'm doing? It's about the higher purpose. Yep. Yeah. It's just the here and now, and how do I get there where I want to go?
Hello and welcome back to the Ignition Path Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Goodknight. And before we get into our guest today, I just want to take care of some secretarial things. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. If you hear something during this episode that resonates with you, don't hesitate to share it with your friends. And my puppy just joined the show. I don't know what her deal is. She just jumped. I'm surprised you guys didn't see her right here. But nonetheless, I've got her in my room with me. She's my in-house co-host today off camera. But today we have Brigitte Bojkowszky. She is an entrepreneur with a heck of a nice path, how she got there. I've never interviewed someone who had done what she did before she became an entrepreneur. So I'm excited to hear about that process and what she learned during that time and what made her want to become an entrepreneur. So welcome to the show, Brigitte. How are you?
Hi, Cal. Thank you so much for having me today. Besides Puppy as one of the most important guests of the show you assisted. So I'm happy to be here with you. Thank you so much.
No problem. So just start off a little bit. Like, I know in our pre-call you talked about what you did in the corporate world, or / what you did as a full-time job. You know, that wasn't all on you. Like, you worked for a corporation, and I'll let you tell the story. I know what industry it is in, but I'm excited to hear about that part of the industry and how long you worked there. So go ahead and tell a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you're and basically where you started, and kind of just talk about that, and we'll go from there.
Okay, hi. So my name is Brigitte Bojkowszky. I'm a brand identity strategist and business educator. I'm located in Austria. I'm operating from a very small country in the middle of Europe, but I'm operating on an international level. And what I am doing is that with, let's say, more than 2 decades of global expertise in crafting and transforming brands, I'm now an entrepreneur and help individuals, but also organizations craft and create and shape and reshape brand identities, whether it's a corporation as an identity or it's a person, and a person can be a leader. So here we talk about leadership branding or personal branding per se, and that has many different facets. But the core of it all is all about creating identities that are authentically shine. So that's what we are. And awesome. And my journey started somewhere else, let's say, somewhere completely different. So it's a really funny journey, because at the end of the day, it's like a puzzle and everything comes together. So my journey started as a flight attendant. Then I became a student, then a corporate leader. Then I became a student again. And then I became a teaching professor, and then an entrepreneur. And that's me. So that's a rather unconventional journey.
Yeah. Especially when you start as a flight attendant, and how that kind of shaped what you did. Was it, talk a little bit about those days. Was there, I'm sure at the beginning there was excitement and travel and positive, but was there anything inside of that flight attendant world that you were like, I got to get the hell out of here?
I mean, it was, I think, the most fascinating and exciting time in my life. I mean, it's a life in the sky. I served as a head flight attendant at the end of the day. It was an incredible experience, not just for travel and getting to know the world, because I was mostly on long hauls, but it also taught me so much about leadership, because as a head flight attendant, you are responsible for a crew, for your passengers. Sure, you have to report to the cockpit, but still, it's a responsibility. And then also navigating through this cultural diversity, you're getting to know so many different cultures and people and understandings, and why do people what and how do people approach different topics. So that was really interesting, and the way of how they live. And everything around that, and also about, the different brands in the different countries and their origin and why they became big. So it was also really interesting in that regard. But I think the most important thing was about creating exceptional and memorable experiences for passengers on board. And that's where my passion for excellence first took root, because I have a passion for brand excellence. At the airline, our slogan was "Service is our success." So it is about the service you provide. And this is unique, this is relevant, this is specific, and that has a certain excellence that's coming along. And then when you know what that is, what your superpower is, and what you're really good at, you attract those kind of people, those kind of clients, right? And you want those. You don't want to attract everyone because you cannot serve everyone.
Right.
But this is my recipe. This is where my sweet spot is coming from. And everything else after that just added on to that path. Yeah, because flying around the world is fun. But it becomes a routine, even though you have here's almost an emergency and here's an irregularity.
Well,
but it's
and
troubleshooting all the time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. That you were we're kind of reading each other's mind there a little bit, because, my full-time gig is I'm a paramedic. Okay.
Yeah.
There's a lot of troubleshooting in paramedic world, right? We could get a dispatch that says you've got difficulty breathing. We get there and it's really a heart attack, which also incorporates difficulty breathing. And so you've got to troubleshoot things. So having that background, it makes so much sense that it added to your overall depth of being an entrepreneur, because I've had some interactions with positive ones, interactions with flight attendants before, and I still remember it. There was a time when I called out to the airplane that we had someone unresponsive, and I got him to the floor and started to do my assessment to do CPR on the guy, right? And the flight attendants are the ones that engaged with me and said, "We're trained. What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a respiratory therapist," because I was only a therapist at the time. I wasn't a paramedic, but I knew all the cardiac arrest, CPR stuff. So we had a nurse, a doctor, and me, plus the flight attendants, who opened up their kits, and they had everything that I would need to run a cardiac arrest for a little bit until they landed, right? And so it was just one of those things. I remember those gals, and they were just so thankful and so accommodating, and they basically, after he was fine and everything, we only had an hour left in our trip, and I'll tell you what, they treated me and my friends like we were royalty after that. It wasn't that's not what I was striving for, but they really appreciated the fact that it wasn't all on them, and to know what you have to be trained for in that situation. You have to be trained to de-escalate. You have to be trained in some form of primary medical stuff. You have to be trained in hospitality. It's such a cool industry, and it always seemed intriguing to me, but it was one of those things where I just couldn't be away from my family like that. It's definitely, for me, it would be okay, when I was single, that'd have been a great thing to do, but it's one of those, I've never really known too many flight attendants, so this is really cool to hear how flight attendant actually shaped your entrepreneurial path.
It's a long time ago. We're talking about when did I start? 33 years ago, but still, and also working then in teams, you experience that, everyone has protocol, has procedure,
right?
And it's a way of how you do that, right? So you know exactly where you're coming from, and you just operate, and you're gonna solve that problem. This is in the forefront. Yeah.
Right.
And
so it gave you those tools that you need to solve the problems for these companies and these businesses that have branding issues. And that also, you said there's so much that you said that I want to unpackage just in your intro. So I told you we would have things to talk about, because that's how I think on the fly. So one of the things that you said is, you told me what the slogan was. And, I have a slogan. It's Ignition Path Podcast, igniting your entrepreneurial path. So it's all in the name. It's all in the description. Another thing that we talked about last week was if you having a personal mission statement. I have a mission statement for my personal business. My company that I work for as an EMT or as a paramedic has a mission statement. So talk a little bit about mission statements, and what do you take to new companies about mission statements? Because I truly believe, and you can tell me that you think they're crap, but tell me what you think about mission statements and what they do and how they shape a business.
Yeah, so I think that really starts with the core of branding. And a mission statement
Mm-hmm.
is about, is you go in introspection first, either as a person,
Mm-hmm.
as a leader, or as a company. It's about why am I doing what I'm doing? It's about
It's
the
the
higher
why. Yep.
purpose. Yeah, it's just the here and now, and how do I get there where I want to go? And that's where I want to go is my vision. A vision is always, what do I want to achieve at the end of the day? Or what's the legacy I want to leave behind? What is the overall goal you might never achieve? Maybe you pass it down to the next generation. It's something that is infinite very often. Yeah, it just cause that is something that is where your passion is, and that's what you do because you have to do it. That is your why. And a mission gives you all the little steps of how you're going to achieve that. And I think every company should have a clear understanding what a vision is. It's a short sentence, is a world of shining brands, for example. And then when it comes to me as a brand identity strategist, but also the mission, how you get there. And then you need the values, your fundamental, your core values that help you, yeah, on this mission to accomplish, yeah, and to get you to your vision. That's what you are visualizing in your for your company, what you stand for at the end of the day. This all comes together. You want to say something?
No,
Okay.
I
Yeah,
totally agree with you
yeah,
because
yeah,
I just pulled up my, I'm on my computer, so I pulled up my mission statement. I haven't looked at it for a while, but I'm like, I just kind of glanced through my mission statement, and it literally, as I'm reading it, everything you're saying is ticking off. I'm like, okay, did it? Okay, did it? Did it? Did it? And like when it core values, I talk about being a father, like this, my mission statement is me as a whole, right? And it very much it very much incorporates not only my medical background and what I do for EMS and the community, but it all translates into what I do for my clients when it comes to podcasting and growth. I'm right there. I'm compassionate. I am understanding. I have one client that lived in Ireland last week, or she lives in Ireland now, but they lost their power. Like Ireland had some really bad storms, and we had to pivot. We were supposed to do a whole bunch of project together and work on some stuff, and she didn't have any power. And then she's working out of a hotel, and I'm like, okay, she's still trying to get content out and do what she's doing in her coaching service. Like, okay, we're gonna put a pause on everything for my services, and when she gets back on her feet again, once power comes back on. So once you work with people, part of that mission is your values and how you pivot when something happens that is different than what the path was. We were supposed to record a podcast, we were supposed to edit that podcast, and we were supposed to produce that podcast all together so I could teach her how to do it. And all of a sudden that just blew up in one day, and we haven't done it, and it's been a week. So now we're a week behind in her schedule, in her brain. But I'm like, it's okay, as long as you're safe. Please be safe. Like there's compassion and care that goes out above and beyond the time that I'm on an ambulance and I go and I try to help someone with a heart attack. It extends into this business, and everything you said there really resonated with me, and I'm glad that you shared that message, because I think it's so important that anybody out there listening to the Ignition Path podcast and trying to find, maybe they're at the beginning of their path or in the middle of their path, or trying to think about pivoting in their path, and now they're at a fork in a road and it's still a path, like what do I take? The main thing is go back to your mission statement. If you don't have a mission statement, go and search through it and create one.
Yeah, and as I say, everything around it, it's like your vision and also your core values. And it's not something that stays forever. It also evolves with you as a person, with you as a business, because we are not insulated. We are exposed to external environment, to political situations, to consumer trends, to innovations. So there is always something that is going on. So you revisit your mission statement. Yeah, you revisit your values, because also your values can change over time. Maybe the value stays the same. For example, a good example of mine, I had a value. One of my values was beauty. Yeah, because beauty, as a flight attendant, you always had to be, beautiful and take care of your body,
like
and
this.
you
look like that.
you represent an airline, and you behave accordingly. You have a certain presence, right? So and then over time, beauty took on a different meaning. For me, it's also the inner beauty. That what you bring to the table, for me now as an entrepreneur, is my experience, my expertise, my know-how, everything that makes me that person to offer that service in my best possible version. So the beauty has become different. I use instead excellence because it is more professional, and because you also have to be careful working in different industry because they already put you in a box. Beauty, she's working with fashion, she's working with, other body care brands or whatsoever. So I talk about excellence. And and beauty is a descriptor of that specific value. And excellence for me is also something that everyone should strive for, because it means you want to become a better version of yourself. You are operating in excellence. Yeah, that's what for me is important, because I want to give the best possible service. And that should not be confused with perfectionism. No? That I get it out. Perfectionism, yeah. Because a lot of people are striving for perfectionism. And that does not make us relatable. No,
Right.
First of all, we can't be. We reach about to 80%. The rest of the 20% is so much hassle and work, and you never achieve it. And then you're not satisfied. And that also resonates. So if you're striving for perfectionism, it takes away from your authenticity. And your authenticity is important in order to elicit emotions from others, to connect with others on this emotional level. And that's where a brand really creates an impact you want to make others feel with your brand.
Right.
Just think about your favorite brand and what you feel about it. It makes you excited,
right.
You want to have that, you're proud of it, you're using it, you're showing it. There's a certain passion coming in, right? So that's what you want to achieve. And also, this such an emotional bond also makes you as a brand sticky, because they purchase you. And I'm not thinking about exactly. So the consideration set of other brands becomes very small, because you want to stick with that brand. For example, I stick with Apple because I can rely on it. It's my whole ecosystem here. Even though maybe other technology might be even better, other brands might be better. So no, I'm going with this. It also looks good. So we're coming back to that. Yeah. But it's all encompassing.
I'm on both sides of the fence on that one. So
yeah.
Well,
it's a very polarizing brand, though.
Right.
I have to say that.
Well, when you mention striving for perfectionism, that's actually a really good lead-in to my sponsor. So one of my sponsors that I have that I'm getting ready to put up here talks about specifically getting rid of perfectionism when it becomes a problem and it's holding you back. So real quick, we're going to hear from my sponsor, and we'll come back and we'll dive into the schooling part of what you mentioned earlier about what schooling did for your entrepreneurial path. So real quick, we're going to hear from Daniel Packard and what he does when it comes to anxiety, perfectionism, self-doubt, and people-pleasing. So we'll be right back. Let me ask you a question. Would your life be better if whatever you're struggling with, you could finally break free of? So what am I talking about? The Funky Five. What's the Funky Five, you ask? It's those oh-so-familiar struggles: procrastination, people-pleasing, perfectionism, low self-confidence, and the one I call the big A, anxiety. For years, I struggled to manage my own version. I call them my Funky Three. I had 3 of these Funky Five weighing me down. I've tried just about everything to deal with them. Then a guest on my podcast, Daniel Packard, shared with me a profound thought that I had never thought of. So Daniel, a UC Berkeley engineer, spent 8 years working with this team and over 3,000 people to create an approach that doesn't just help you manage these issues. It actually frees you from them by getting right to the root of what's holding you back. So after meeting with Daniel, I decided to give it a shot. And within 6 short weeks, gone. Truly gone. I was so amazed. The number one thing I was dealing with was procrastination. but miraculously, a deeper-rooted struggle with people-pleasing, something I'd been unknowingly battling for a lifetime, lifted entirely. And the anxiety that came with them both, gone as well. Are you tired of battling any of your funky fives? People-pleasing, procrastination, perfectionism, low self-confidence, and the biggest happy killer of them all, the A word, anxiety. Imagine how much better life would be if you weren't just managing these things, but free of them, quickly, and yes, permanently. If you're ready for a real solution, head to danielpackard.com and get his free 90-minute training. Daniel himself will walk you through what makes his approach so different and teach you a technique you can use immediately to start feeling the difference. So if any of the Funky Five, or maybe your own version of the Funky Five, are holding you back, don't wait. Visit danielpackard.com. You can truly get results and start living the life you want. Okay, and we're back. And once again, please contact Daniel if any of what I said during that resonates with you. You have anxiety, you have perfectionism issues, you have people pleasing or self-doubt. I went through his program. I'm a completely different person since then, and I don't have the anxiety that led back to the people pleasing and all that anymore. So now we're back with Brigitte Bojkowszky and her entrepreneurial path. We heard earlier before the break that she was a flight attendant and how that shaped her. But she also mentioned that she went back to school a couple of times. So talk a little bit about what you did in school and how that shaped your entrepreneurial path at this point.
Yeah, so it was really interesting because at my time when I was a flight attendant, I was not flying and studying. I couldn't do both, so I had to choose. And since I was intellectually a little bit unchallenged, and also knowing that my contract ended with the age of 36, I knew I didn't have much time, because what am I doing after the year of 36 or the age of 36? And at that time, it was like that, So I knew I needed to jump plane not to jump ship, but jump plane.
And hope you had a parachute on.
Yes. Because I knew there was something else, and I had to find it. So I was searching for this higher purpose, and I knew I like to educate people. I always like to train people also on the plane. So I did my master's in business education. So I became a certified teacher, but also my specialization was in international marketing and management. And that's where my love for the global brands and also my experience and history of being a flight attendant. I saw the world as a small little, planet. And so for me, this was something I really
in the grand scheme of things, in the universe, we are a small planet.
Yes, we are.
we're just a piece of dust in the wind compared to the whole universe. So
absolutely. So that's where I saw I could kind of pursue my international experience, and also then study that. And then I became a corporate. I was working for different companies, but then I was offered a position as a PhD student for a doctorate to go for the Doctor of International Marketing and Management. So I did that, and always with a clear goal in mind to go back to the airline industry, because that's, once you are with that industry, you kind of get infected. It's like a virus. You will always have that, planes and traveling. And so, but the airline industry was consolidating at that time, and was firing, then hiring. So it was a huge setback for me not being able to go back. So for me, the world somehow collapsed, and I had to pivot and explore other opportunities. So then I went into real estate, and during the time of the financial crisis, what happened. So the whole real estate industry collapsed, and I also, the company that I worked for as a head of market research went bankrupt. And at that time, I realized that my professional identity had been too closely tied to the company I worked for. So I kind of lost my own identity insofar, because I was working. I was identifying myself with that job and with that industry and with that company. And so it dawned on me how vital it is to build a personal brand, a unique identity that is disconnected from a company brand, from a job or from a title. And then I also did some further education. I became a leadership trainer. This is what I already started at the university, but I did further training in that as well. And then as a side to the job in the real estate, I already started teaching at the university in global management, global strategy, global consumer behavior, global brand management. And then I was asked by the university, hey, Brigitte, don't you want to come full-time as a teaching professor? We really need you. So,
That's awesome.
And then I ended up teaching full-time. I was able to educate, empower students, and also combining, my corporate experience also with my academic rigor. So I'm really
together,
And now as an entrepreneur, when I offer my services and the way of how I do it, I know there are academic, scientifically proven models. I come from the industry. I know how people work. And bringing this all together is really beautiful. I think that also is a differentiation factor that makes me very unique in the market of having different paths coming together, now being an entrepreneur. And also,
so you're not doing any more teaching at all? You're just teaching.
I was teaching until last year as a sideline, more on an executive MBA, global MBA level.
Gotcha.
That was fun. But I stopped basically when COVID rolled in. I did some online teaching for universities, but I want to concentrate really on my business at the moment. And taking care
of.
Let's talk
about that now. Like, tell us all about your business now and like what you're doing now, what your model is now. Like this is the part of the show where we get to talk about what you're doing now and how people can find you and what you're, are you looking for individuals? Are you looking for corporations or people that are looking to grow their business or grow their organization? So ideally, what's your ideal client right now?
Okay, so actually, I guide individuals and teams. So I do one-on-one coachings, I do workshops, I do group coachings, I work with executive teams. It really depends on, is it the company identity I'm helping them to revamp or, to refresh, or is it elevating their executive presence? So I do a lot of one-on-one coaching here or group coaching, for example, for big corporations. I do workshops for ERGs, employee resource groups, or personal branding for individuals who are somewhere, in their life in a pivotal moment where kids are out of home, where they are corporates, they don't know anymore, is this really fulfilling me, doubting themselves, not quite sure how to move on. So this very often there is a point in life where you want to change, where you say, it's enough now. I don't want this life anymore, and I move forward in a different way. What is out there? What is fulfilling me? So this is about personal branding. And everything starts from there. And I'm a proponent, and that's why I say branding starts with mindset. It's all about what you think. Yeah. It goes so far beyond just the logo or tagline. That is the end result, how you address it, how you materialize it, how you make your brand tangible. But it starts with mindset and then with introspection. As we talked about, uncovering who you are, what you stand for, your core values, your uniqueness, your greatness, and aligning that with how you want to show up in the world. So greatness always starts with inside. And we talked about this also, these limiting beliefs, right? So it's really understanding where is this coming from and how can I turn that into empowering beliefs. And this is where, when you feel this, like where you are stuck, where you feel like this is not okay, that is moving into the wrong direction, it tells you already this is a no-go. Think about what gives you a good feeling. What makes you happy? What makes you joyful? And there is where the freedom is. And when you act in this freedom, things will come, because then you're opening up, then you're full of passion, then you want to do that, whatever you are thinking about, and then you are also strong enough to reach it. And coming back to I think, to resilience, an entrepreneur really needs that. Resilience to bouncing back rather quickly from a disappointment, from a setback. And this limiting beliefs is something, when you look at that, and when you go in introspection, it's where the greatest leaps are, where they rest. It's where you really leap forward. It's where the biggest learnings are. And I think that's, if we understand that, then the rest is pretty much easy under parenthesis. Yeah.
Right. Well, and
it's always a roller coaster ride.
Right. Oh, for sure. Well, and it's so refreshing for me, because I actually went through one of those periods of time about 6-8 months ago, where I was working on a different business model with my other podcast. Well, before my other podcast was even envisioned. So I didn't even know about the podcast thought process of doing it to support what I was doing. I was going after something in mental health for first responders, and it was just not getting off the ground. And so I had to pivot. I had to rethink. I had to go back to what you literally just said. I had to really search back to my core and say, how can I take what's not happening well for me right now and turn it into something positive? And I was like, wait a second. I'm a podcast producer. I've never really been a host of a podcast. I've helped with podcasts and been a co-host, but I'm like, I know how to do this. And I've got like back to the technology. I've got technology now that speeds up my process. And I was like, wait a second, I can start a podcast that is meant for first responders. And then that actually, once I did that and I focused on that actually turned a full circle 360 degrees back into, I ended up meeting somebody in the podcasting world that needs first responder mental health help. And I'm like, oh my gosh, holy crap, I just proved myself. Don't freak out, just pivot,
Yes, exactly. And that's where the growth lies. It's stepping out of our comfort zone. So we need to take the time, sit back, relax. That's what they tell you in the plane as well.
What you learn through that process. Yeah.
Exactly. And step into the unknown. As you say, you need to take action. Step into the unknown, because growth only lies outside of the comfort zone. Yeah. And you need to have that resilience, because
that's a great takeaway.
And just embrace this nothingness. There is nothing. You don't know what you're gonna step on when you put one foot in front of the other. But you need to trust your instinct. You need to trust it's happening for you. Stretch your ability, discover this untapped potential, and break your mental barriers by doing so. Yeah. And then, as you said, you did it. Learn and evolve. Learn and evolve. Treat setbacks as these stepping stones. Yeah, it's a challenge, and it carries always a lesson, experience, and that adds up to your experience. So you have more ground in your comfort zone. But then it's time. So don't stay there for long. Yeah, it's not good. Step out and conquer the next.
When you start a podcast and start getting people on to talk about mental health and how they can help people in their struggles, I wasn't there very long. Once I decided to do it, I think I had 5 episodes up in like less than a week. So, real quick, I want to ask you if you'll do something for me. And this, if you don't want to do this, I have another pivot that I'd like to see, just how you would coach somebody I brought this up strategically because that podcast is now getting ready to be rebranded. So that original podcast is possibly, right now it's in early discussion, but how would you go about, if you're willing to give some free coaching? It doesn't have to be in depth, but just some high level stuff, just so people can see how you work with someone. But I've got the mental health podcast and it's called Elevate. Okay. And I'm getting ready to, I've talked to the leader of a conference that does a yearly conference for mental health in the first responder world in my local area. Well, the name of it is called Phoenix Project. So I presented to him, hey, have you ever thought about doing a podcast? He's like, oh, we'd love to do a podcast, but nobody on my team has time. And I'm like, I have time. can we rebrand? We can call it Phoenix Project by Elevate, and I can be the initial host, and anybody in your organization that would like to be a host, would that interest you? And he said, oh my gosh, Kyle. He goes, so I don't have to like start from scratch. I'm like, no, we just rebrand my podcast and bring on a new flow.
Okay.
What would you give as
So,
advice?
this is a really good and interesting thing. Before I give advice, I mean, usually I don't need to give advice because it comes from them, because I'm asking a lot of questions. First of all,
Sure.
So you call your podcast Elevate. So I suppose it's written E11E. Okay, good. So first of all, I want you.
And why it's double one?
Yes,
one
that's
is
what I want to know from you. What's the story behind it? What does it mean?
Yep. So what it meant was originally Elevate was a podcast I created from a Tony Robbins group. And I really liked the idea. And the 2 1s was our group number. Okay. That was the group we were on Zoom, was the group 11. So it embraced our connection. Well, then when I started looking at the name and the podcast that I created for that group kind of fizzled out and nobody really wanted to do it, I reached out to him. I said, hey, I really like that name. I have a way of pivoting into something positive. Can I have all your guys' permission, even though I'm the one that created the podcast and bought the name, because I bought .com and all that good stuff. But they were very, very supportive. They said, go ahead. It sounds like a great plan. So what I did was when I pivoted that podcast into Elevate for first responders, the 2 1s are the on and off duty personas of the first responder, because we have to know both sides of a first responder.
Got it.
Before we
love that story.
Our mental health.
I love that story. Now, since you wanna kind of help bringing this Phoenix project to life and take off like a phoenix, right? You said you need to create a story, because you say Phoenix by Elevate. When you do that, Elevate is endorsing Phoenix as a brand. There is a connection. Yeah, that means there is kind of a co-branding. Yeah, it's a certain branding relationship that you with Elevate have with Phoenix. So you need to tell this story here, the unique perspective you as Elevate bring to the table so that Phoenix flies or takes off. It's about storytelling. This is the first thing you need to do. Who you are as Elevate, being able to support Phoenix, and what Phoenix stands for you and what Elevate stands for Phoenix. It's first of all the relationship of the both, the story, the background, and with that, then you can set up the next steps. The vision of awesome. Phoenix, the mission of Phoenix, maybe also, not maybe, for sure, think about the shared values that combines the both of you, Elevate and Phoenix.
Right, which is first responder mental health, right?
Exactly, yeah. And then you go from there and set it up like that. And what is this going to be like, the Phoenix? Is it interview style? What is the why you're doing what you're doing? So vision, mission, values. But start with the story. Yeah?
That's awesome. Well, that's all. We don't need to go any more in depth about that. But that's so great.
Yeah, and what you want to achieve is trust for the audience and the connection.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Well, and for our audience that's watching this and tuning into this, they just saw a little bit about how you work with people, and that's a great value. That they got a little miniature, like, oh man, that's great. Like they help. She helps me pull out ideas and helps me, think of the different things that I never thought of, because I never thought about what is the story that combine us. I never thought of that. So that's great information.
Yeah, and that is what I really love about my job, is seeing how enlightening or, the eureka or the aha of my clients, because they understand suddenly they have the greatness all within them already, but just don't know how to bring it to the table, because it takes someone to have an understanding about that, to connect the dots and trigger you and nudge you to what is really relevant at the end of the day.
Right. Well, real quick, tell people how to find you. Like, what's your website? What's your LinkedIn? We'll put it all, of course, in the show notes.
Put it all
Bridget
together.
will
Yeah.
send me all that stuff. Yeah, but go ahead and just verbally say what the best way people find you and whatever you normally tell people, and then we'll close things up and we'll get
Yeah.
this posted today.
Yeah. So people can find me under my website, brigittebrins.com. They can find me on LinkedIn. The link is Bojkowszky B. And it's going to be all in the show notes. And I'm happy to hop on a 20 minutes free discovery call if there are any questions, if people want to get to know me a little bit better. And so I'm happy to do so. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Brigitte, thank you so much for coming on the Ignition Path podcast. I appreciate it. It was such a great episode. I feel, just that's why I love having these podcasts. I get to know people and get to pick their brains and learn a little something. And you get to learn a little bit more about me and my world.
Yeah.
So it was just great to finally dive deeper into your story and your path. So once again, everyone, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. If anything that you have a friend of yours that's struggling with entrepreneurial path and you think this episode will help them, hit that share button and just send it right over to them. You can go to my website to find the episode, or Apple or Spotify and YouTube, of course. So, Brigitte, thanks so much for coming on, and you have a great day. And I'm not sure what time it is there. You're probably, 5 or 6 hours ahead of me.
It's 4:30 right now.
Yeah. It's 10:30
so,
in the morning for me. Yeah.
Yeah, but
All
I
right.
travel. Okay, good. So thank you so much for having me. It's so beautiful to have conversations with people from all parts of the world and seeing where we have things in common, but also seeing the differences that makes us unique. So I love that. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Take care. Bye, guys.
Thank you for listening to Ignition Path, fueling the entrepreneurial fire.